gentlemen, thank you. Be seated. Let the record reflect the presence of the defendant, Mr. Demons, his counsel, the assistant state attorneys, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. First of all, sorry for the delay. That's my fault. No one else is, and I apologize for that. Based on the court's ruling, the next witness will be testifying wearing a mask. You are to listen and to view and weigh this evidence as you would any other witness. All right, is this your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Detective Danny Polo.
Sir, you want to stand up, raise your right hand, and be sworn?
Yes, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm my testimony you give in this case should be the truth, the whole truth, but nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please state your full legal name for the record.
Danny Polo.
Please spell your first and last name for the full report.
First name is D-A-N-N-Y. Last name P-O-L-O.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that microphone in front of you, just up or down, but not back and forth, all right?
Yes, sir.
Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Good morning, Detective Polo. How are you today?
Good morning. Well,
Can you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
I'm a detective with the Broward County Sheriff's Office. My name is Danny Polo.
Prior to working with the Broward County Sheriff's Office, do you have any other law enforcement background?
I worked for the City of Hollywood Police Department
And how long did you work for the state of Hollywood?
approximately 2 years.
How long have you worked for the Sheriff's Office now?
Since 2015, so approximately 8 years.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what division or unit you were assigned to currently?
I'm assigned to the Strategic Investigations Division.
What does Strategic Investigations Division, or SID for short, cover for the Sheriff's Office?
Within the Strategic Investigations Division, within SID, we have multiple county-wide units, such as Major Narcotics Unit, Organized Crime Unit, Gang Investigations Unit, Money Laundering Unit, Internet Crimes Against Children, Joint Terrorism Task Force, Bomb Squad.
So with regards to the SID, you do undercover investigations.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that why you're wearing a mask today?
In part, yes.
So going to the Gangs and Organized Crime Unit, what years were you assigned to that specific unit?
I was transferred to the Organized Crime Unit in March of 2018, and I was there up until about January of 2021.
Can you just pause just a moment?
Can we approach very briefly?
Okay, Detective Polo, so we left off, you were talking about you'd been in the Gang and Organized Crime Unit since 2018?
Yes, March 2018, I was transferred to the Organized Crime Unit.
Okay. Prior to going to the Organized Crime Unit, did you have a background in gang investigations?
Yes, I've been gang liaison for the city of Deerfield Beach since approximately, I'd say, the end of 2015.
And were you ever part of the Multi-Agency Gang Task Force, or MAGTAF?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a county-wide task force with multiple agencies, not just Broward County. The way the Broward County Sheriff's Office is divided up is different districts. So the city of Deerfield Beach is its own district, Pompano Beach is its own district. All those districts have assigned liaisons that are to communicate with the Gang Investigations Unit, as well as liaisons for other jurisdictions such as Sunrise PD or Hollywood PD, the non-Broward Sheriff's Office districts.
And what are the investigational goals or aims of the Multi-Agency Gang Task Force?
Gang reduction, reducing gang violence, reaching out to the youth and trying to stop it before it starts, and just gang investigations.
So for the last approximately 3 weeks, where have you been assigned?
I was just transferred locally to the money laundering task force.
And as part of the money laundering task force, do you still have an aspect of organized crime and gang violence that you focus on?
Yes, it all overlaps. The only difference is I'm now working the money laundering aspect of these criminal enterprises and gangs.
In terms of during your time from 2018 to 2023 in the organized crime and gang unit, how many times did you have a chance to work as an undercover agent?
I lost count. Many times I've done everything from street level narcotics deals all the way up to international narcotics trafficking cases, firearms cases, stolen property cases.
More than 10?
Yeah.
More than 50?
Yeah.
Are you also credentialed by any other law enforcement agencies?
I am a task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, and I'm also a task force agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Explosives, so that's the ATF.
And in terms of your responsibilities for those two agencies, what are they?
As part of being a task force officer for the DEA, I can conduct federal investigations related to narcotics. I can, instead of just charging and investigating cases on the state side and going through the state attorney's office or statewide prosecutor's office, I can file cases with the United States Attorney's Office like any other federal agent would. We have the same powers. And with the ATF, it's the same thing. The powers of the ATF would be the firearms violations. So I can work firearms investigations on the federal level.
Okay, so you talked about doing gang investigations. What does a gang investigation entail?
You initially start, a lot of times you start by, you get complaints from the neighborhood, or whatever neighborhood is being affected by gang violence, or just you observe shootings that are happening in a certain area, and you start looking into it to see if it's random or if there's something more organized going on. A lot of times we find that these violent crimes are being committed by members of criminal gangs, and once we've identified the criminal gang, the main goal is to identify which criminal gang it is. That way we know how to approach it. Some gangs are more structured than others. Some are very informal and don't have much structure at all.
So Detective Phillips, if we could just go on a little bit on that, as the types of criminal gangs.
Sure.
Can you define for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what would be a national organized criminal gang?
So the national, they're called national gangs because they're found in multiple states. Doesn't mean every single state will have every single one of these gangs. So like most people see on TV, Bloods, Crips, Gangster Disciples, the Mafia, biker gangs, motorcycle gangs. These are national gangs. They have chapters, sets, they call them sets, or lineups, in multiple states, multiple jurisdictions, all over the country.
So Detective Polo, you also mentioned that sometimes they're a little less organized. Could you explain what a neighborhood street gang or hybrid gang is?
Neighborhood street gang is just that. When you have a neighborhood that hasn't, you have a group of 3 or more individuals involved in criminal activity, ongoing criminal activity, and they decide to take on common hand signs, colors, symbols, clothing, anything to unify them and show that they are a group. And they operate sometimes within a city, or they can operate within multiple jurisdictions, but they're working together and they've adopted these common identifiers. These gangs sometimes eventually will report to or turn into national gangs. But for the most part, there's many neighborhood street gangs. You can have one neighborhood, one 10 by 10, apologize, 10 by 10 blocks of neighborhood where you have 5 different gangs operating within that neighborhood. They might get along, they might not get along.
Okay, so in terms of the amount of time or resources that you put into a gang investigation, how long does it take?
We work every case differently because some of these cases require years of investigation because the gang might be very, very structured or just have a lot of financial support due to whatever crime they're committing, and those gangs are a little harder to tackle. So you have to invest a lot more time, a lot more money, a lot more resources into dismantling this type of organization. Some of the more disorganized gangs, it's a little easier. You can go out there and find out, first of all, what crime they're committing, whether it's robberies, burglaries, narcotics trafficking, or just low-level narcotic sales, firearms trafficking, or firearms sales. And then if they're very disorganized, it's easy. You just work individuals instead of the entire organization. You just start picking off different individuals, get criminal charges on the people you can, identify who within these less organized gangs has the most, the stronger presence, because there's always someone who's, they're not necessarily in charge, but the person that has the most respect. And you start trying to dwindle it down so that the violence stops. That's the main concern, is the violence.
So Detective Polo, what training and education do you have in the area of gang and gang organization?
At this point, I think I'm probably upwards of 500 hours of just specialized training in gangs, organized crime, and money laundering. Like I said, it all kind of intersects. These are trainings I've done all over the state.
Do you have any certifications in the area of gang investigations and specialists?
So I have a advanced gang specialist certification from the Florida Gang Investigators Association, and I have a gang specialist certification from the National Gang Academy.
Can you explain how you are certified and what requirements you have to pass before you can be certified by the Florida Gang Investigators Association?
Every year, the Florida Gang Investigators Association holds conferences. During this week-long conference, they put on a multitude of classes. They bring in either reformed gang members or gang members that are currently in custody. We can do interviews with them. They'll teach you about what it was like for them to join these different types of gangs, why they join these different types of gangs, the risk factors for the youth, how they think, the gang mentality, so that way we can better understand how to approach gang members when we're working with them. Because a lot of times we're not just arresting them, we're also trying to, in a way, befriend them so that they maybe understand they need to stop doing what they're doing, because they're either going to end up dead or in jail, and neither one is good for anyone.
So you mentioned that you've done the training. What about in terms of hands-on investigative experience? Can you list for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury some of the different specific gang organizations you have investigated?
So, for most people in the general public wouldn't realize it, but Broward County and many cities and counties have huge gang problems. They just operate under the radar. Broward County has almost every gang you can think of, from the Bloods, Crips, Gangster Disciples, Cert 13, which is a Hispanic gang that originated on the West Coast, Norteños, another Hispanic gang, outlaw motorcycle gangs, different gangs within the outlaw motorcycle gangs, not just one specific group.
Have you investigated, for example, white supremacy groups as a gang or organized crime?
White supremacy groups, yes. I mean, they operate way under the radar. They try to. they're strange groups.
So you mentioned Bloods, and that's what I want to focus on.
Sure.
Personally, how many Blood gang-related investigations have you done?
Specific investigations or suspects?
Suspects, sorry.
This last year, probably over 30.
430?
No, over 30.
Over 30. Oh,
Just maybe this last year.
and that's just in 2022?
Yes.
Oh. Have you ever testified in court on the subject of gangs and gang violence?
Yes, I testified in both the state and federal court.
Approximately how many times?
Maybe 6 times.
Okay. In terms of the sources of knowledge on gangs, you mentioned a couple at the conference, and interviews with documented gang members. Could you tell us a little bit more about those type of interviews and the different types that are out there?
So, as gang investigators, we gain this knowledge not just through doing search warrants and finding documents that these gang members or these gangs generate. They create documents with their creeds, their codes, their oaths, the rules, bylaws, all that. So there's a lot to learn from that because it's written documents that they pass on from member to member. Because like every organization has rules, right? The sheriff's office has rules. You work for Publix has rules. They have a code of conduct. They have a way you have to dress. They have appearance guidelines. That's the same thing with gangs. It's no different. The national gangs have that a lot more structured. Some of these, we call them Bibles, gang Bibles. They're very lengthy. Some can be over 100 pages. So we learn a lot from those. The other side is interviewing and speaking with gang members. Sometimes it's gang members that we interview because they decide to cooperate with law enforcement to avoid either being prosecuted or to get a lesser sentence. So they're working off charges. Sometimes we interview gang members on an arrest. They don't want to cooperate with law enforcement. They don't want to reduce their charges. They don't care. They're okay with going to jail or seeing how the legal system works out. And, if you build a good enough rapport with them, which is the main goal, speak kindly to everyone, just be polite, treat everyone like a human being. I've had great success in interviewing many, I wouldn't even be able to tell you how many gang members.
Can you explain what is a field interview or FI card?
Field interview is it's done commonly in the field. You approach someone on the street, they committed a traffic infraction, some kind of infraction, and you make contact with them, or it could be consensual. You just see someone you want to talk to, approach them, talk to them. If they don't want to talk to you, you can walk away, that's fine. But like I said, if you treat people with respect, most of the time they'll talk to you.
When you're doing a field interview, what types of data are you collecting or aggregating at that point?
The first thing I do if I'm talking to someone is, as I'm gathering their information, if they decide to give me their information, there's times that people will decide to talk to you, but they won't give you their name, and that's fine. But I'll be looking at their person, at their body, to see if they have any tattoos, if they're wearing any specific colors, especially if I know that they belong to a specific gang. So if I see a member of a neighborhood street gang that wears military colors, right, camouflage, and I see the person walking in this neighborhood where primarily this is what they wear, and I decide to make contact with them, and they decide to talk to me, then I'll start noting those things. Okay, he's wearing a bandana with the camouflage colors, or he's wearing a belt with camouflage colors, or he's got this type of tattoo that's indicative of this gang. So even if they don't talk too much, sometimes their body tells you a lot. The way they're dressed, the way they stand. all those things are things you take into account.
You mentioned some times people would testify. Do you review testimony of various criminal cases across the country for gang information?
Yeah, we review testimony of gang members that are testifying in court. We review testimony, not even just testimony, we review indictments and indictments on the federal side and the state side, and read about these gangs and how they were investigated. And we learn about the different types of ways that the gangs operate in different parts of the county or different parts of the state. Because just because you're a member of the Bloods doesn't mean that the Bloods operate the same in every city or every county or every state. The rules are the written rules, but the rules are bent.
So with regard, you also mentioned intercepted communications, like wiretaps. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is a wiretap and how we use it in a gang investigation?
Wiretap is a lengthy process where you first identify someone who's committing criminal acts. So in the case of a gang member who's committing criminal acts, they're involved in criminal activity. And once you've developed enough probable cause to believe that they are using a phone to conduct this criminal activity, you start drafting a wire intercept application. It's a very lengthy document. It's not an overnight thing. How you see on TV where you just ask a judge for a signature and they give it to you. You have to show that you have exhausted every means of investigating this person or this gang. So you can't just go up on this person's phone and start listening to their communications. You have to be able to explain that you weren't able to conduct an investigation because surveillance wasn't possible. Because let's say on a gang case, the neighborhood is controlled by the gang. You can't do surveillance at these neighborhoods sometimes. As soon as you walk in or drive in, they'll know your car doesn't belong and you'll get approached. Many times that's happened to me.
So Detective Polo, specifically on wiretaps, once a wiretap is authorized, what do you have to do for the communications that are intercepted?
You pick a schedule based on the person's activity. So if the person is on the phone 24 hours a day, then we try to cover 24 hours a day of communications where someone is sitting inside a room on a computer just monitoring live phone calls. As the person makes a phone call or gets a phone call, you are getting that phone call too. You're listening to it. You're identifying whether it's criminal in nature. If it is criminal in nature, you continue to listen. If at any point in the conversation it becomes non-criminal in nature and they start talking about, the basketball game or what they're doing over the weekend, then you stop listening. It's called minimizing. You turn off the call and you follow the rules of minimization. So you spot check the call at that point. Then you check the call. The rules are different for every case, so I can't say it's this many minutes here, this many minutes there. But you would stop listening for a certain amount of time. The rules that were determined by the prosecutors, and then you begin listening again. If when you start listening again, you hear evidence of criminal communications, then you continue to listen for the amount of time that they're.
So Detective Polo, for wiretaps, how many hours do you think, can you tell the jury, you've spent listening to criminal conversations on wiretaps?
Hundreds, if not 1,000, maybe more.
Is there a special vocabulary that you learned during the course of listening to wiretaps?
So every gang, every culture has their own way of speaking. So a lot of gangs come up with code words. Some organizations that aren't gangs have the same thing, and you have to decipher them basically. And with gangs, in these Bibles, they sometimes put their codes, and it's easier to identify what certain things mean. So they might be speaking in slang, but we know what they're saying because we either have basically a dictionary that they've created that we already our possession, context, you start understanding what they're talking about.
Okay, so that sounds like a good segue to go into, you mentioned the Bibles and things. Have you had the opportunity as a gang member to conduct search warrants and seize some of these printed materials?
Yes.
Could you explain some of the things that you've gotten out of, like, for example, email accounts?
Yeah, so a lot of gangs that are sending these Bibles around, they don't want these Bibles, or these books of knowledge. They call them knowledge. They don't want these things in the hands of law enforcement. They don't want law enforcement to understand their inner workings. And sometimes, every couple of years, they'll revamp their books of knowledge, and they'll change their codes. They'll change a lot of the rules. The original history with books of knowledge is going to remain the same, right? You can't change the date the organization of the game was established. It was established in 1996. It was established in 1996. You can't change that in your Bible. But you can change your codes. You can change the language you're using. You can change some of your rules depending on what's been going on in the world. It's a lot of gangs. Most national gangs were started a long time ago in the 60s and 70s, and they were racially divided. Now, they're not. Now you have white people, black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, all working together in the same gang. That used to just be a black-only gang, or a white-only gang, not including white supremacy gangs and stuff like that. Those are...
Okay, so you mentioned sometimes it's seized through email accounts and search warrants on that.
Mm-hmm.
What about the interception of cell phones or extractions of cell phones from known or suspected gang members?
So if we have enough probable cause to seize a cell phone during an investigation, and it's let's say a gang member's cell phone, we'll do a download of that cell phone, make a copy of it basically, and then we can go through the content of that cell phone. Sometimes we can go through the entire phone, sometimes just specific things that you're looking for. And in those phones, it contains, a lot of times it'll contain photographs of these books of knowledge, because that's how they're also sending it to each other. You need to learn this oath, here's a picture of my knowledge. Or it's just communication back and forth, and just texting each other and explaining to each other, this is what you need to know when you talk to this next person who's going to quiz you on your knowledge. And if you don't know your knowledge in these national gangs, there's usually some repercussions. Maybe early on in the gang when you're brand new, they take it a little easier on you. But as time progresses, the more time you spend in these gangs, you're expected to know these things off the top of your head, and you can't mess up.
So when you say things you're supposed to know off the top of your head, are there questions and required responses?
Yeah, so that's something that a lot of gangs do. It almost feels like they all kind of copy each other. There will be greetings, and the greeting has a specific response. And the purpose of that is to know if someone is really a member of this gang. So a lot of times gangs have national gatherings where they'll host a large event for all the gang members in the country. Whoever wants to come, to just come, meet, socialize, and network with other members of this organization. So as an example, there's a Bloods gang, Blood set called 5-9 Brims. They host their national day on May 9th, because May is the 5th month. They're the 5-9 Brims. So May 9th, 5-9, it's all symbolic, right? So they'll meet up, and they'll usually go on videos, on live streams, and post up these events, and just everyone's wearing their colors, and you'll hear a lot of the language, you'll hear a lot of the slang, and that's another way that we pick up on how these gangs operate.
So Detective Polo, you're telling this juror that people go and put criminal gang activity online?
Well, the criminal gang activity would be the crimes. They're not. Maybe sometimes they post up the crimes on YouTube to show that they're strong or to instill fear in neighborhoods, but sometimes they're just showing their presence. Hey, we're here, this is who we are, this is what we wear, and don't forget that we're here. They're not necessarily doing anything illegal in those videos, they're just, it's a gathering.
Is it illegal to be a member of a gang?
No.
How would you differentiate a criminal street gang versus the sheriff's office? Y'all wear the same uniform, you have a hierarchy at the sheriff's office. How would you differentiate that from a criminal street gang?
So the definition per the statute, Florida state statute, and most of the statutes across the country read the same. It's a group of 3 or more persons with common signs, symbols, colors, identifiers who are, as the primary activity, are engaged in criminal activity. So the key word is, as part of their primary activities, they are conducting criminal activities. Doesn't mean all their activities are criminal activities, but a good portion of them are.
So going back to a little bit more of your training and experience, you mentioned about the conferences and trainings that you've done. Approximately how many of those have you attended while you've been in the gang unit?
I think my first conference was in 2016. I've attended every conference since then. The next conference is this August. I'll be attending the national conference in Chicago. I'll be teaching courses at that conference.
Can anyone sign up for that conference?
People in the field, prosecutors, attorneys, law enforcement, corrections officers, victim advocates, youth counselors.
So how many times have you taught at those types of conferences in the past?
This will be my first time teaching at the conference. I teach at the Broward County Sheriff's Office. We teach the new recruits, the new deputies that are coming in. We teach them about the gangs that we have in Broward County so that they're not oblivious to what's going on around them. We'll show them a map of which gangs operate in which areas, what to look out for, hand signs, identifiers, tattoos. So that's something we teach to our recruits. We teach, I've taught at the Broward College at the Police Academy, where we taught the school resource officers, because gang involvement begins at a very young age for the most part. Most gang members join their gangs at early ages, 11, 12, 13, are recruited very young. So school resource officers need to know what to look for so they can stop juvenile gangs from forming, because a lot of times these juvenile gangs that are starting in a school will then expand and join larger neighborhood gangs or national gangs, and then that's when you start having problems, because the juvenile gang members have something to prove, and they usually get a little more violent.
So you also mentioned some of the social media content before. Are there individuals who put out videos or commentary about gang activities?
Yeah, we're in the era of social media, so everything's on social media right now. Gang members across the country are posting stuff that probably would have never been posted years ago. Their knowledge, history, things they did when they were incarcerated, how the gangs were formed, the leaders and the founders of these gangs that are now no longer in prison do podcasts and talk about how the gangs were formed, when they were formed, who did what kind of violence they had to commit, why they were created, whether they were created because they needed to form to protect themselves against another gang, or whether it was just they unified based on race or based on location, geographical gangs. We have that here in South Florida. So this is all publicly available, and it's national leaders and national founders of these gangs that are putting out these videos, as well as just regular gang members on the street that are not of any special rank. They post up videos. If they find out someone is claiming to be a blood or a crip and they're not, they'll confront them on social media to get views. And some of these confrontations turn into physical assaults. People get called out for being for false flagging. That's what they call it, false flagging. Just pretending to be, claiming to be part of a gang but they're not.
Okay, and so I think the last aspect of gang knowledge that we haven't yet discussed, the undercover investigation.
Yes.
Could you explain briefly how those are conducted and what types of information is brought back?
So we do undercover investigations on most gangs that we can do them in pretty much almost any gangs. So some gangs are a little bit trickier than others based off what the requirements are. Obviously, very organized gangs do background checks sometimes, stuff like that. That makes it a little more difficult. But we've infiltrated gangs. We have detectives within the Brown Sheriff's Office and within the other agencies that we work with. We've actually infiltrated gangs, been blessed into these gangs, become gang members, been put on the national books, and no one knows. I mean, that's we can't say those names, but
Understood. Is this something that's done for like the Bloods, the Crips, as well as the Mafia and things that's been done for many years in this particular area of investigation?
yeah, the Mafia is a great example. That was done a long time ago with the Mafia. It's been done with Bloods, Crips, outlaw motorcycle gangs have been infiltrated multiple times. Most recently, we infiltrated several blood gang sets. We have several detectives that are blood gang members in their undercover lives.
Do they bring back and share the knowledge with the other members of the Organized Crime and Gang Task Force?
That's the best part about those investigations, is that it's not just that we gain this intelligence, but we corroborate everything that we're getting from either informants or from people that just want to talk to us on the street. We're not just taking their word for it. They're telling us exactly what to do. Hey, you need to learn X, Y, Z. By the next time we meet again, you need to learn this oath. You need to know this handshake. You need to know what to wear. You need to know what to say when you meet this guy. You're going to meet the next boss up, because everything it's organizational. So you're going to meet the next person up, and they're going to keep quizzing you. They're going to find out where you are in your process with the game. So if you're a very young gang member, not of an age, but young in the game, you might have some leeway. But we've had those instances where we're meeting other gang members and our undercover might have messed up the handshake, and everyone just kind of freezes. So looking at that person like, who is he? Because that's the first thing he should have known. How did he mess that one up? And that we kind of have to recover from that. Those little things. So these are things that have corroborated all this information that we gain from phones, emails, social media, interviews. That's the icing on the cake for us.
You're just going to tender for defense to water in the area of expertise and gang knowledge. And
Thank you. Council, before we do, we're going to take a short recess. Do not discuss the case, don't form any opinion about the case, don't allow anyone to discuss the case. Certainly no research, just leave no depends on it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Along with the defendant and the witness, detective, the court reporter saying she has having a little difficulty because you're facing the jury a lot, so if you could just speak up, all right?
Yes, sir.
Can I see counsel sidebar, please?
yes, sir.